Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another edition of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. I'm so honored to convene this national, international conversation about what is happening under COVID-19, and we've covered all kinds of topics. We'd love for you to share this with your friends, your family around the world. Please hit share. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and please share so that everybody can participate. You can find me on Twitter and retweet this, and you can also tag individual friends. Today, we have a very special show for you, and we want to tell you all about it, but I want to hear from you. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me how you're feeling. How are you doing through this crisis? It is day number 56 of the lockdown. I've been locked down here for 56 days in New York City, and today we're going to get you to meet the News Project. This is a technology and services startup working with news outlets to address the critical needs for sustainable business model in the news market. And we will meet the CEO, Merrill Brown, and the head of audience, Alex Leo. They're at Merrill BRO and Alex M. Leo on Twitter. Please follow them and please hit share so that your friends and family can join us. Tell us about the value of news to you. Tell us how you've been reading the news. What are your sources? Tell us where you're watching from. We want to hear all about it. Let's also take you to our sponsors. We're so grateful to all our sponsors. We're sponsored today by a friend of ProPublica. Congrats to ProPublica on its latest Pulitzer Prize. That makes 6 in 12 years. Journalism that holds the powerful accountable. Support ProPublica at a time when deep dive journalism is most needed. Brought to you by Nidhi Sinha, who is a fan of ProPublica. Please donate today. Go to ProPublica.org and make a donation. And congrats again to ProPublica and local reporting partner Anchorage Daily News as they win Pulitzer Prizes. We're also sponsored by Pratham USA. This Giving Tuesday now, support the Pratham USA RISE, or Responsive Innovation to Sustain Education campaign. From now until Mother's Day, May 10th, your impact would be doubled as donations will be matched. Please go to prathamusa.link/rise for Pratham, or just go to prathamusa.org and please tweet and follow Pratham USA at Pratham USA. We'd love to see you support this great organization. We also want to tell you about a fun Mother's Day project that we have. This coming Sunday on Mother's Day, we have a Thank a Mom on Mother's Day. You can see me dressed as a little boy in Tokyo, Japan with my mother, and you can see our friend Neil Parekh, who executive produces so many of our projects, his mother with her grandchildren, one of them, Neil's daughter, Emily. And what we want to do is to salute mothers, and we want to read your messages on the air. You get a chance to salute your mom or a grandmom or an aunt or a mother-like figure in your life. 50% of proceeds will go to Nick Kristoff's C19 Impact Initiative. Nick Kristoff's C19 Impact Initiative. Just go to digimentors.link/mothers, or just email me, Sree@sree.net, SREE@sree.net. If you would like to be a sponsor, please email us, Sree@sree.net. We have very reasonable rates to be part of the show. Thank you for your support of all of these days, 56 days in a row. Let's see where we are watching from. Jonathan is watching from the East Village. Thank you. He's watched all 56 episodes. He's always the first to chime in. We have somebody watching from Los Angeles, California. We have Muzammil watching from India. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how you're feeling. What are you thinking about? We're talking about news, media, how we get all of the information that we need to be safe and to be informed. So let me now bring on our guests. We are so delighted to have them with us. They're going to talk about their project and also talk about what's happening in the news business. So let's see if we can bring them on. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sree. Hi, that's Alex Leo. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Sree.
and Merrill Brown. They are both with the News Project, a startup that is doing so much interesting work in technology. We've been friends for a long time. I'm going to ask each of them as I start every show. Please, Alex, tell us, how are you doing? Where are you? How's your family?
Hi, thank you for asking. I'm in DC. I moved down here. I got married in November, and I moved down here. I was a born and raised New Yorker, and I left that place after 30 something years. I will leave that unnumbered. And yeah, I know you have a viewer in the East Village, born and raised on East 9th Street. So I was very sad to leave, but my family's well. My parents are in high risk group. You know, my dad's 85 and my mom's recovering from cancer. So I'm making sure they're not going out. But, you know, we're well for now, and that's all we can hope for.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad, and congratulations on getting married in November. Is it, as they say, it's a year, right? You're still a new bride for a year or so, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
My wife was most interested in that part because that allowed you to delay the thank yous notes for a year. I don't know what the protocol is now, and we won't ask you if you got all your thank you notes in.
I did.
Merrill Brown, how are you, Merrill?
I am well, Sree. Thank you for asking. I'm in the far northwest corner of New York City, which is called Riverdale, New York. And although we're in the Bronx, where the COVID-19 situation is very intense, we're in a very quiet corner of it. We do hear lots of sirens, as everybody still does, I think, in New York City. But it's peaceful and calm here, and I'm healthy. And I began my new permanent life here on March 11th.
Wow. This just before all of this went down. I think we got together March 12th, 10th, something like that at a meeting. And already things were a little iffy, but we didn't think there'd be a lockdown like this and for so long.
We were only at the elbow stage at that point.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We hadn't moved to mandatory namastes as we have now. Let me ask you, Merrill, you've had a storied career in journalism. You have launched multiple projects that have had lasting impact, including, of course, MSNBC.com. Tell us about how you survey the news landscape today.
That's a grandiose question, Sree, but I guess I should expect nothing less. This is a very difficult period, and it's an extraordinary period in many ways. News consumption rates have perhaps never been higher. People are using news sites, news products all around the world in extraordinary numbers. But at the same time, a lot of parts of the business are suffering dramatically because advertising has collapsed. And the print model is being further brought down by what's going on around us. So this is a rough time, but at the same time, never has the work of journalists, whether it's covering what's going on in healthcare, covering what's going on in state and national capitals, covering what's going on in medical research, covering what's going on with the human tragedy we live in. It's never been more vital, never been more important, and yet we're living in a moment where the industry is more fragile than ever. One of the things we've been working on at our company, the News Project, is talking to news organizations about what they do with all this traffic they're getting. So usage is through the roof, and yet there are no ads, or there are very few ads that benefit from extended impressions on news sites. So what's a news organization to do to maximize that? And one of the things, and we could talk about this more later, one of the things we're spending a lot of time thinking about is what do you do with those users to make sure, or at least raise the possibility that they'll be continuing users and they'll support through membership or paywall subscription or whatever the right tool is, that they'll support the news site at a time when ad dollars, in many places round to zero. So an extraordinary time on many levels, Sree.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see who is watching us, watching with us. Tim Stone is watching from the woods in Pennsylvania. Fernando says he's hungry for quality news. Lori is watching from Dobbs Ferry, not too far from where you are. Anthony's watching from India. A YouTube channel called Bachelor's Cooking Vlogs, I think. There's been a lot of different kinds of cooking. People who never expected to cook are now cooking, so maybe they'll enjoy that. Paula's watching from Tallahassee. Paula's a dear friend and part of our team. We do a lot of taking physical events, making them virtual, and projects like that, and she does a great job. Markand is watching. Ooh, look at how much information he's gotten in there. He's really filled that up, and he's doing so much to help clearly with the COVID-19 crisis. Subhash says hello, and he's watching from Hyderabad in India. And Thomas says hello from Seattle. Seattle's an old home of where Merrill used to live and work when he was with MSNBC, and I want to hear that MSNBC story. But let's go to Alex and her point of view about the news landscape.
Yeah, I mean, as Merrill said, the irony of it in some ways is that readership has never been higher. People are consuming news so much, but without the ad impression dollars, it doesn't mean much for sustainability in news. One thing that people have been putting a lot of effort into, a lot of organizations have been putting effort into their subscription models, and I have no doubt when we see the numbers after this that those will have gone up. Anecdotal evidence thus far is good. But, I mean, this might change business models for a lot of different groups, and advertising reliance has been, I mean, it's just been decimated. People do not want to advertise next to this. There's not a lot of dollars. As we know, historically, Q1 has never been great for spending, which is the first 3 months of the year, because of the huge budgets at the end of the year around Christmas and things like that. So this is not a good time for advertising in general. And a lot of companies themselves are on the verge of bankruptcy, cannot support local news and newspapers and other sites the way they used to. So this is calling into question business models in general. I think that we will see a lot of focus put on owned audiences as a result of this. I always recommend to our clients at TNP not to focus so much on what we saw in the early 2000s and early 2010s, which was a huge reliance on companies with algorithms like Google and Facebook for traffic, because anytime those algorithms are tweaked, your audience goes away. And the only audience that you can rely on is your owned audience, the one that subscribes to your newsletter, that comes to your homepage. So a big emphasis on loyalty, on conversion. That's where I see the future of this going.
Yeah, that's really an important point, I think, that we can explore further. Let's look at some of the other folks watching. Laura's watching from New Jersey. Her daughter had an incredible Facebook video, kind of a parody of Life Under Quarantine that I hope someone will put in the comments. It was so good. And let's see who else is here. Someone whose Twitter handle is Tom Brady Rocks is watching from West New York, and he calls it the Twilight Zone. I said he, could have been a she, of course, a Tom Brady fan. There are lots of Tom Brady fans all over the world. Let's talk a little bit about the News Project, TNP, as we heard, the News Project. And I'll ask Merrill to talk about it as we show the website. I'm just going to share the screen here so we can do that. So go ahead, Merrill, explain what the News Project is, please.
Well, I want to be be more positive than we were in the previous conversation about the state of things, Sree, and that is because never has there been a better opportunity on many levels for people to start news and information projects. And at TNP, that's a principal reason, not the only reason we exist. We founded the company because we're in a new entrepreneurial era of news in which early stage or startup news sites all around the world need great technology and great capabilities in order to be successful. They need the same capabilities that the New York Times or Washington Post needs, in the sense that a quality site that attracts and keeps readers and that gets them to sign up for newsletters or subscriptions or whatever that individual news organization's model is, all that is complicated. And it involves a lot of analytics, and it involves a lot of proper tools, and it involves a lot of user experience to get that right. And we want to help news sites in the US and around the world get that figured out at a price they can afford. You know, if you really wanted to do this right, you could spend an enormous amount of money at it. You could also do it cheaply and throw up a news site on a DIY circumstance. But we think we've got it sort of right in the middle, so that if you're committed to doing this, we're in a position to help you with templates, with tools, with our own expertise, particularly Alex Leo, who's with us tonight. So we think the News Project is at an important moment in journalism history where we can help entrepreneurs fulfill their dreams.
And so what do we see here? We're go to the website, right? The newsproject.net. What are we seeing? We're on the product tour. So can you drill down a little bit for us?
Okay, so these are the 6 things that we offer: content management and templates. We have a fully built site. So if you wanted to start sreenews.com or .org, we could have you up and running in no time at all. Our partners include WordPress, which is an investor in our company, and 10up, our technology partner. We think 10up is the best WordPress technology development company in the country. They're a great firm. Continuing on the scroll, we can show you a little more. We have a great design firm, Charming Robot, which I know you know, Sree, who have built the UI and UX for all our templates. Here's a sample template, a site we'd love to launch sometime soon around Veterans Affairs. It's very simple. It's basically a homepage for a site with startup level content. We offer audience development and engagement services, which is a principal part of Alex's focus. We have a partnership with Piano, which you can see on the next screen. Piano is the leading provider in North America of registration, paywall, and subscription services. They do it for large organizations like The Economist, and they do it for our customers. We have a partnership with the Associated Press, the nation's largest news organization. We have a dashboard that we make available to our customers that helps them understand both their goals and their audience process. And those are basically the capabilities of the News Project.
And so you also have here a description of everywhere your team's members have worked. And so we can see that we have founded, built, created, expanded, and advised many of the world's leading news and information products and startups. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as Merrill said, there's 6 pillars of this, and each one of them is core to the business model for any news organization. For example, UX and design, right? Dan and the team at Charming Robot have done such extensive research. This is not, oh, we'll add parallax scrolling and everyone will think your site is great. No, this is deep research into how people consume news. What is the best way to guide them from piece to piece, to keep them on the site, to keep reading, to get them to click the newsletter? All of that has been deeply researched in a variety of ways that make these templates out of the box great for news organizations. And one thing I would stress is that whether it's Dan in UX or Miguel in product or me in audience development, we all started on the editorial side of things. So we have a deep background, no matter where we ended up. We know what it's like to be a writer and editor. We know what it's like to work as reporters, and we know that that's an incredibly important job. We just want to make everyone's lives easier. We're here for you, and that's what we do at TNP.
I love that. Let's look at some of the comments that are coming in. Graham says, hey, from Delhi. And Tom Brady Rock says, mainstream news is too biased. Mohammed says, good morning from India. Thomas has a question for you folks. Are many entrepreneurs interested in investing in news, given the industry's troubles?
There are, in the United States alone, hundreds and hundreds of news sites that are under 4 or 5 years old. They've started in communities where newspapers are shrinking or have failed. And they've started around topics that even the most successful newspapers today aren't covering in as robust a fashion as they might have. You can think in that context about STAT, for instance. I don't know how many people in the audience know the science site STAT. At this moment in time, their coverage of COVID and related science matters is extraordinary. They have some of the best science writers in the world writing for it. It's an example of a great category, obviously very timely now, but there's a new news site, relatively new, called STAT that serves content in that field. So both in terms of undercovered communities and undercovered topics, it is a great and exciting entrepreneurial moment as we try to reinvent the news ecosystem.
And do you see other examples of topics that are undercovered?
Well, frankly, Sree, this is one of my favorite topics, and that is, I think almost everything is undercovered. I think the breadth of Trump coverage and how much oxygen Trump takes up in the national ecosystem obscures the fact that there's a lot of stuff that's being poorly covered. We used to know large metropolitan newspapers and news magazines by the beats they covered well. And not much of that exists anymore, quite frankly. And none of it exists at regional newspapers that used to have national news organizations like the Atlanta Constitution and the Chicago Tribune and others of that scale. They may be covering Chicago and Atlanta well, but they certainly don't have much national reporting covering lots of beats they used to cover. You used to look at the Chicago Tribune and expect great coverage of agriculture, for instance, from the Midwest. So there are lots of holes out there, whether it's housing or race or economics, and people are starting sites to fill those voids, and there are plenty of them.
Yeah, thank you. We're showing everyone your Twitter handle so that people can follow up and ask you questions. Merrill BRO and Alex M. Leo at the News Project, which is at TNP. We have lots of people commenting and watching. We also have people watching on LinkedIn. And George says hello from New York City. And we also have a question about how much do you think the market for news is right now? We talked about the interest in the topic, but what about the business side? Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as we've said, the advertising is in a really rough space. What I think can come out of this that might be good is a reconsideration for many businesses about office space and how much New York City office space, where most major publications in this country are national publications are based in New York or DC, is so huge. And sometimes I'll walk into startups, whether it was Mike several years ago or any new startup, and be like, oh my God, they're in this very high rent building. The promise of the internet was that we could work from anywhere, that we could have a diverse staff from all around the country, and yet people ended up to be clustered in New York and DC in the Acela corridor in these high rent buildings. Maybe what comes out of this is more of that democratization, where we have more reporters based in St. Louis and Denver and all over the country covering more beats, and we give up the office space, which is a huge drain, right? And the insurance that comes with it. There's a lot of money that is invested in that. So that could be one great thing that comes out of this. We don't know.
Sree, if I might make a comment about that as well. One thing that's really important to remember is we and others who do what we do can help entrepreneurs get off the ground in ways that were inconceivable a while ago. 5 people, 6 people, 8 people dedicated to covering a neighborhood, a community, or a topic can make a heck of a difference in coverage of that topic. And they don't have to worry about trucks and ink and paper and a plant, and as Alex said, even office space. So if you think about 6 or 8 or 10 people taking on a community or a topic without all the other stuff that was required to run a news organization in what some would refer to as the good old days, it's a much different climate now, and we hope we can be at the center of empowering entrepreneurs to do exactly what I just described.
Thank you. Let's see. Sudha is watching, and Tom says, thanks, Merrill. And Renee says, I've seen Stat. Renee Edelman says she's seen Stat and wants to hear about how more such publications can be built and put together. And Tom Franklin says, go Merrill Brown, go Sreenivasan. I'll add a go Alex in there. So, good stuff, he says. And the question, how does visual photojournalism side of all of this fit into this ecosystem you described?
Well, I wish we could get Tom Franklin to answer that. Yeah. He is one of the premier photojournalists of our day, known far and wide as the guy who, among other things, snapped the picture of the flagpole at Ground Zero. It's not all of us who have a postage stamp on our walls that's a picture they took, but Tom shot that and shot many other things brilliantly. But in any event, the sharing of photography and the ability to move photography around the world in real time, and the ability of you and me and all of us listening to this call to share photos and be at news events has changed the entire dynamic of this. Now, the artistry and journalism of true photojournalism is as valuable as ever, but we live in a brand new era. It's almost hard to remember when we all weren't carrying cameras in our pockets. But thanks to the Tom Franklins of the world, photojournalism is still something that's extraordinarily special and widely shared.
I just wanted to show, these are the pictures.
And I would add that Adobe and Washington Post. Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to show the pictures. These are the Tom pictures that won all these prizes. Amazing. And he sends you a heart, folks. So that's great. Tom Franklin, terrific. And Tom, we want you to come on one of these days and talk about your work and all the great visual journalism that you've been seeing. Alex, I interrupted you.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to add that Adobe has teamed up with the Washington Post to do a new project around creators and making sure that digital content that we share, like photojournalism, is getting the proper attribution, because it's so easy to take an image down and share it on Twitter and not, so that partnership is something that I'm very excited to see what comes of.
So, Sree, I want to ask you a question. How is it that you've recruited so many people at 6:30 in the morning to be watching us in India?
People get up very early in India, but we're just glad that people are with us. We are in partnership with Scroll.in, one of India's leading news, culture, and analysis websites, and they're in the process of reaching out to their audience globally, and that's why we're working together. And it's been so interesting to have we even have to think about things like when we announce the time of our show, like when we say ET or Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time, those things don't mean much in many parts of the world, including India, where they only have one time zone. So trying to understand that has been a fun part of this challenge. And we should tell people that you've both embarked on a new project as part of the outreach and connecting that you're doing. So we want to show them, we want to show everybody the new interview series that you've put together.
Well, thank you. Well, we're launching a show, which is one part of the story of tonight and why we're here. We're launching a show called The News Project Live tomorrow night at 6 p.m. New York time, Eastern time, live. And our first guest is Emily Ramshaw, who's the founder and CEO of The 19th, which is a brand new, important, exciting news site launching later this year that's about the nexus of gender, politics, and policy. They have a great passion for news about women's affairs, and the women's vote is extraordinarily important and is getting a lot of attention in the United States during this election cycle. And they see many holes in coverage. We were talking a moment ago about holes, and gender, politics, and policy is a rather large one in the American news diet. And Emily, who was the editor-in-chief of the widely read, very much appreciated Texas Tribune, left there to start her news site, and we'll be interviewing her on our show tomorrow night at 6 Eastern.
Yes, we look forward to hearing from Emily. And there was such buzz when they announced that tells you something about the value of subject-specific, topic-specific journalism. And Alex, as you watched that account come out, or the announcement of that project, what are the things that struck you? And if you can explain the 19th, that name, because we have a global audience, they may not quite know that.
Oh, okay. The 19th Amendment was the amendment to our Constitution that gave women the right to vote. And Emily's website, the 19th, it's about the intersection of women in politics and policy. And that's, there's a lot of unique topics for women that aren't necessarily covered in most mainstream publications. So this is a nonpartisan group. She will be interviewing, her first two interviews, live streaming, are with Stacey Abrams on the left and Ronna McDaniel, the head of the GOP, on the right. So she's trying to cover a lot of bases, but there's a lot to talk about. I mean, look at women in COVID, right? We're not dying at the highest rates, but women are the highest rates of essential workers in this country. Women have a huge burden of childcare right now. There's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, and so I'm so glad you're going to have her on. And we haven't really seen enough, updates on where they are with the project. So I'm very excited to hear that. And Tom has already, I'm using this to book my guest, because thanks to Merrill, Tom has said he'll come on. Tom Franklin will come on, and he says, well said. And Laura says Tom is fantastic, a colleague at Montclair State, where Merrill used to work, and where we have the Center for Cooperative Media that helps hyper-local news sites collaborate together. Look forward to seeing the News Project show. Sounds great. She says that. She also said earlier, Laura did, that this is a great topic about the News Project and its guests. Looks so helpful. I will pass this on to folks in local news. Absolutely. So anyone watching, if you have friends in local news who are struggling and they want to see if they can re-examine, as they call, their tech stack and get some help in thinking about revenue, they should call the News Project. But also, maybe you have an idea for a news site that you wanted to launch, a niche subject area that you wanted covered. And Merrill will correct me if I'm hitting not the exact points, but that's the idea, that you can do this. And I want to use this to pivot to the journey of our own two guests. And we'll start with Merrill. Tell us about your journey. You have worked at some of the biggest, most important websites in the world. And as you describe your journey, if you can contrast what it was like 20 plus years ago to launch MSNBC and today, what you're doing.
Well, that's a hard intro to follow, Sree, but I was a newspaper reporter back in the 1900s, as I like to say, the last century. Did a variety of other media things during that period. I ran a magazine called Channels Magazine in the late 1980s. I helped start a cable network called Court TV in the early 1990s. Got involved in the internet in the mid 90s and was asked to move from New York to Seattle to start MSNBC.com, which at that point in time was the most widely trafficked news site on the early days of the web and was until the early 2000s. And it's interesting because the news project in part emanates from work that I did there to build what was a very good set of technologies that created our content management system and allowed us to do things that were unheard of, like publish every hour back in the 90s, in the very early days of the internet. And I've been taken with the issue of bringing down the cost and making more simple the act of publishing news on the web, since then. And that's among the reasons that the idea of launching the news project came to me a couple of years after I left 5 years as the director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Between my MSNBC years in Montclair State, I did a variety of things, including working with you, Sree, to launch News 21, which has really been an extraordinary educational effort. Originally started as a graduate school program for 5 universities, Harvard, Columbia, Northwestern, Berkeley, and USC. It's now many, many more universities than that. It's permanently housed at Arizona State University. And you and I worked on it at Columbia, Sree, where we recruited the first classes of graduate students to participate in that. So I've been involved in a lot of things, many of them about trying to figure out where news is headed. And I'm lucky enough to be running this company today that hopefully can be at the center of all that.
That is so exciting. Can I get a good story from being in Seattle and how you were convinced to go to Seattle to work on news, which is not something that Seattle, apart from good local newspapers, was known for?
Well, two reasons. Number one, the idea of building a newsroom on a technology campus was in and of itself very attractive. We were the beneficiaries of having what was at the time an extraordinarily successful Microsoft corporation behind us, and that seemed interesting. And Bill Gates at the time didn't fully grasp what this was going to be or what could be, and gave me a broad rein to go figure it out. He said to me in our first meeting, "We're starting a cable network and we're going to put it on the internet. Go figure it out." And that was a pretty exciting charter. Didn't have a lot of parameters around it, but we got to figure out news on the internet in one of the most interesting places we could to go do that. And somebody on our conversation today, Tom Brew, was one of my great colleagues during that period.
And in terms of Mr. Gates himself, now of course he is an elder statesman and is out there doing all kinds of things to help the planet in a very direct way. That was the beginning of his journey. And are you surprised or not surprised to see his career arc?
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I guess I'm surprised to see that he married so well. And that's 100% of a joke, because it was always remarkable to people how extraordinary his wife is. And she has been a major force in making the Gates Foundation what it is. But no, I'm not surprised at all. He's a great thinker, extraordinary person. He was a great leader there. I had the privilege of working with him and with Steve Ballmer, who also is a gifted leader. And so, no, I'm not surprised. And I guess if there's one thing that's surprising is that he's managed to bring in so many extraordinary people to his circle who have contributed so much to philanthropy. And, example of that is Warren Buffett, who I also had the pleasure of working with at the Washington Post Company very briefly.
I mean, one of the things that people don't realize or remember about Warren Buffett is, instead of starting his own thing, he said, the Gates Foundation is so well managed, I'm going to give my money to them. and you go manage it. And I still remember that announcement they made on one of the big shows about that. It was quite extraordinary. We have several comments coming in, so let's read them. Aman says, media needs to start charging for the reporting that they're doing, including reacting to news articles, and make money more than the actual article itself. Alex, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great point, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think it might take some collective work between organizations, because right now we have a very piecemeal approach to how organizations are making money. But if there can be a system like Act Blue has for politicians, where you can easily donate to anyone with a click of a button, like with Easy Pass, if they can do that for news, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and there's a question from Ordinary Talks. Do you have an India go-to strategy?
Well, India has come up a number of times for our company, and there's extraordinary opportunity there. I mean, Sree, you probably know the number off the top of your head, but there are a lot of newspapers in India, and a lot of them are digitally relatively new at the game, and so we would like to get into India at some point, but India is also daunting, and we're not quite ready to leave North America, but we will be soon, and we'd love to talk to Indian publishers.
Great. So we hope some of those people are listening. One of the things that, since you brought it up, I will say that the Indian news market is extraordinarily vibrant, exciting, and because they were doing so well until very recently in terms of newspapers, just as an example, in New Delhi, there are something like 5 or 6 English language financial dailies. And you think about America, we have one basically, and then the FT and some other things, but multiple just in New Delhi. And then think about the entire country. Or when you watch television, we have 4 or 5 all news channels in America. In India, they have 57, 87, it depends on how you count, right? So and then there's the languages and the regions, and so it's very different. And so I would go to India and I would get an interview saying this, the danger is coming, the storm is coming, and they wouldn't believe it because they were so isolated from that, insulated from that. And the lesson I think we've seen is nobody is safe. And unfortunately, people are using this time of COVID to see if they can kind of shut down their newspaper or lessen their obligations or cancel contracts. All of that is happening now. And isn't that really tragic, Alex, as you look at the field?
Oh God, it is so devastating. I mean, people that go into this work are not looking for a lot of glory. They're trying to do a good job. They're trying to be great craftsmen, and they're trying to tell good stories. And not only are they faced with this horrible market, but the kind of online extremism that now targets journalists is very upsetting. And you mentioned Bill Gates. I mean, the new conspiracy theory is that he is causing COVID to implant chips in everyone with his vaccine, which is obviously nonsense. But without journalists debunking this, there are people like Ben Collins and Brandy at NBC, people at HuffPost, people at Daily Beast that spend all of their time in this evil muck of online extremism, just trying to get the truth out, and they're treated with such abuse as a result, and it makes me incredibly sad. So I think honor your journalists.
Yeah, absolutely. And World Press Freedom Day just the other day, and we want to do that. And we should also point out, by the way, that it's particularly bad for women journalists all over the world. We were talking earlier about the new website, the 19th, and women journalists are targeted, and the kind of verbal abuse that so many of them see in India and other places all over the world is especially sad. Chris Gorman is watching from New York. Hi, Chris. And Anna is watching from Australia. She says, hope you're hanging in there. We are, Anna. Thank you for watching. MB is watching from India. And Tom, who you just mentioned, Merrill, says, is the NBC Microsoft divorce still too painful to discuss? It is for me.
Divorce is always painful to discuss, I'm told. So yes, it's a hard. I mean, we had the #1 news site in the world. The marriage did not work out over time. It ended happily, I guess, for many people. MSNBC is now a very successful cable network. Profit was made by lots of people from it. We invented a lot of stuff at MSNBC.com. We were streaming well ahead of a lot of people. We hired the first blogger hired by a major news site. We did a lot of very innovative things. I'm proud of it. We taught people a lot. We had a great team. We covered great stories. We sent a correspondent to the war in Bosnia. Nobody had ever been an internet correspondent at a global conflict before. So very proud of it. And people like Tom Brew and many others who passed through our organization did extraordinary things.
Great. Laura says, yeah, Laura says, good luck, Alex. And Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina. And Francesco says, hello, hi, Scroll. Mark says, we just lost a major Black newspaper. Publishers and now folks are wondering about the future of this media in a major city, Durham, North Carolina. He died of a long-term illness, not sure if it was COVID related. What do you say to folks like that who are seeing the death of their newspapers in their hometown? How can you help?
Well, I wanted to tie the work of Emily Ramshaw and their project to the larger discussion. They proved that smart people can go and raise a bunch of money to cover an important topic. They raised, I think, $5 million right out of the chute from a very impressive list of investors across ideological lines to start their site. And again, that's something that one can do today. It takes 10 people, it takes 20 people, it takes 25 people, and a very, very limited infrastructure and expense if you spend your money right. So this is the moment for the small and entrepreneurial news site in this country and around the world, and people shouldn't be discouraged by headlines about newspapers failing. Newspapers are failing in a much different circumstance than what we're talking about here. They're failing because they have, in part, because they have very large cost structures. The new news site, like the 19th and many others, like Stat that I mentioned before, have a much different cost structure and a much different opportunity to succeed. And I hope people will come away with this conversation, Sree, positive about that entrepreneurial opportunity.
Look at this. We just have that comment from Doug Levy, who says, this conversation is giving me some optimism about the future of journalism despite the enormous challenges. I'm so happy to hear that. Let's tell Doug where he can learn more. Starting tomorrow, there is going to be a conversation led by Merrill and Alex. This is a kind of preview to that. So let's look at the infographic that's been put together to show you the show that is coming on tomorrow. So Merrill, do you want to just talk us through this?
Well, yes, every week, it's an ambitious thing to do, but every week we're hoping to have important conversations about the news and the news business models that are changing in particular, so we can help people like Doug and people throughout the industry and throughout the news community think through the new opportunities that exist. Emily is an excellent first guest. We will later this month have a conversation with Ken Doctor, leading journalist and student of news and where it's going. Ken and a major newspaper publisher will join us to talk about the challenges the newspapers face these days, especially in the COVID-19 world. And we'll be bringing on guests like this for a conversation that really does happen at trade shows. We're not having trade shows these days, but now we can make that conversation available to many people around the world, as you're doing, Sree, and that's a exciting and timely opportunity for us. And we're excited about the shows we're hopefully going to be producing over an extended period of time.
And what is the how is this going to work with the two of you? You're now on the questioned side. You're going to be on the questioning. Have you had a chance to discuss how all of that's going to work out, Alex?
No, I think we're going to go with the Statler and Waldorf approach and just be both crotchety.
I know one of you can be. You would have to be acting, but the other guy's not acting.
You didn't go into Alex's extraordinary background.
Yeah, please.
Well, I don't want to speak for Alex, but please, Alex.
Yeah, please tell us your story.
Oh, yeah. Well, I started out at ABC News as an associate producer out of school, and I was working on their digital team. No one wanted to work on the digital side, so the pay was higher. I was very excited to be on their side. And then my mentor, Nora Ephron, she was blogging for the Huffington Post, and she said, "You gotta check that out." And I ended up being the comedy editor there for years. I was a senior editor after that. It's really where I got my starts, where I really helped shape SEO strategy and social strategy there. And from there, I learned about product, became the head of product at Reuters.com. And the head of product at Newsweek and in its new iteration, and then went into audience development, and I've been the VP of audience development at the Daily Beast and Yahoo, and now I'm at TNP.
And what did you learn about being in so many different roles, and that is helpful to you today? And I'm curious about the comedy part also. because a lot of
It's
journalism.
how I met my husband. It's how I met my husband, actually. I produced a comedy show at the 2008 DNC, and it was a mix of comedians like Fred Armisen and Eugene Merman, and then political reporters like my husband, Matt Cooper, who are funny and smart. And I booked him there, and that's how we met. And
So wait, is he worried about you now, like having your own show? You're booking people again?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we'll book Matt at some point.
Yeah,
we should. Neil is asking where I went to school because we both went to Wesleyan, and he wants that shout out.
No, you know what? You should tell Matt that we've got a very exciting, handsome guest coming on in a few weeks. And it turns out, right? Like that would be the way to do that. But
you asked what I learned, and what I learned is there's no substitute for great content. It starts and ends with the writing. You can market it as much as you want. You can make a platform great enough as much as you want. But if you don't have a great journalist doing important work, it won't succeed. So.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the things. And I think, I was referring to the comedy also because journalism is often like journalism with a capital J, and it's all serious. But what we've learned is that you have to get it in a format and a medium that people want to see and that can be transmitted and shared online. And you can't just hit them over the head with just the big story. You have to do it in smaller pieces, smaller chunks, some humor, not always, but there are things we can learn from that, right, Alex?
Absolutely. I mean, voice is so important. It doesn't have to be humor. It can, as you say, there's a million ways of doing it, but the flat headlines of 2 decades ago are mostly gone from major news organizations. There's been a lot of adaptation, a lot more voice coming through, I think.
There is also, we should talk about like the machines and machine learning and what that has to do with all of this. So Merrill, how are you using AI and other new technology to help get this successful for your clients?
Well, we are not using much AI yet, but we hope to. It's really important and valuable in ways to get people to sign up, but it's also really important in getting journalists to be able to do the stuff that really matters, while machines do a fair amount of the stuff that doesn't. Take real estate reports or even coverage of ball games or stock reports. Really smart machine learning companies are producing that kind of material for the Associated Press and lots of other people. So in the context of creating new efficiencies, these new technologies are really important, and they'll be part of our offering at some later point for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's see, Neil put out this banner where he said, "Go Wesleyan," and Neil is working with you to make sure that your show shines. I think that's going to be great. Renee says an A-list team of Merrill Brown, Alex Leo for @TNP, and hashtag the News Project Live. Look, she even knows the hashtag. That is great. And she says, Alex Leo comes from a great journalism family, Jackie Leo and John Leo. And I want to just say about Jackie, who was very kind to me when I was trying to go to newsrooms and teach something called the internet and Google something useful. We're talking about 25 years ago, Reader's Digest and other pieces. It was the thrill of a lifetime to be on the Pleasantville campus, right? Like growing up in India and other places in Reader's Digest, the address was always like Reader's Digest, Pleasantville. That's where you enter like the jokes department, like you'd send in jokes for laughing. Laughter is the best medicine. So I remember that address. And thanks to Jackie, I was on campus at Pleasantville. I took all these photographs in the days before the selfie, and we talked about how do brands like Reader's Digest and others, venerable brands, what did they do in the new age? And she also introduced me. I think it was the Russian editor of the Russian edition of Reader's Digest. Was a life highlight, as I like to say. So just so happy to be connected to the Leo family in that.
Yeah, oh, she's such a rock star, and I love her so much. She, born in Bay Ridge, her parents thought she would be a secretary or a housewife, so there wasn't a huge expectation. And she did so much. She was the editor-in-chief of Reader's Digest. She founded Child Magazine when I was born. I'm the original yuppie baby. So there's she's done so much. And John is a conservative columnist, so we don't match up ideologically necessarily, but he's the best as well.
And about Jackie and that idea of being secretary, I remember in Secretary Rice, Condi Rice. You may have read that her father expected her to be a secretary, not Secretary of State, and that tells you something about how giving people the right opportunity and their drive, anything can happen. But we're also seeing, unfortunately, at this moment, where things are not equal in this country, and not everybody has that opportunity. And one of the things I wanted to ask Merrill is not just journalism that's suffering, but when we are in a country where $400 was out of reach for most, 40% of families couldn't write a $400 airline ticket to go to a funeral across the country, as you know, Merrill. Now we have 24 million people unemployed. Like, how do we bounce back from this? You've covered politics, economics. What are your thoughts on that?
You didn't prepare me for that question very well, Sree. That is a very hard question. But I'm encouraged, and I'm trying to be positive during this in this COVID conversation. There's a lot of things going on around the country that are so much better than what's going on within the Beltway in Washington, D.C. And there is so much work around diversity issues and about climate issues and about the issues that we think are, inevitably going to be the issues of the future, that to be too disheartened about the Washington, D.C. noise is to miss the reality of a pretty great country with a lot of good stuff going on. And the media revolution we're talking about is part of that. There are really interesting new publications coming out of Black communities around the country. I listened to a conversation today at the Aspen Institute, at an Aspen Institute seminar, including a woman who runs a publication in Flint, Michigan, and her work is really exciting in Flint, and that's really important. So my hope for journalism is that it really does address these problems in A, covering the stories, and B, creating entrepreneurial opportunities. So in places like Flint, Michigan, and in other cities and towns around the country that are undercovered and struggling, coverage of those stories will shed light on topics that really need light shed on them.
Thank you. So we're almost out of time. One of the things that I like to do is to ask our speakers to give us a couple of final thoughts. And once again, let's remind people of the show that you have tomorrow so that people can tune in. But if they miss it live, they can, of course, watch it later. And it's going to be live on Facebook and on Twitter and YouTube and all of that. You're going to be interviewing Emily Ramshaw for the very first episode of the News Project live, May 7th, 6 p.m. Eastern, a weekly conversation with media industry experts and innovators about the future of news, brought to you by the News Project. And Emily Ramshaw is co-founder and CEO of the 19th, and a really exciting new venture that covers women's issues and all issues that are affecting women. And I want to leave each of you with a chance to give me a final thought and also tell us a little more about the News Project. So Alex, we'll start with you.
My final thought is that if you're out there and you're worried about the future of journalism, now is a great time to subscribe to your favorite or local paper. And I will say that we at TNP are trying to help a lot of small and medium sized publications that can't necessarily afford to have their own audience development person or have their own UX work done, but they can do this in a shared way, in a shared resource way. And I think that might be a lesson for journalism in the future, that kind of working together in a more cooperative way might be useful.
Thank you. That's our guest, Alex Leo, Head of Audience. What a great title, Head of Audience. It feels like you're on our side instead of being in management. We're the audience, and you're on our side, Head of Audience of the News Project. And let's now go to Merrill Brown, CEO of the News Project.
Well, Alex gave me a great segue there in talking about collaboration. As a country, we need more collaboration than ever to find our way out of the COVID situation we're in today. And people need to work together across disciplines, across geographies, across demographics to get that fixed. And the same thing is true in journalism. And in journalism, there's some extraordinary stuff going on. If you look at Pulitzer Prizes, and ProPublica was mentioned earlier, and if you look at efforts to get news organizations working together on collaborative projects, some of them investigative. There's great work going on at that as well. There's actually a conference next weekend involving my old school, Montclair State University, just on collaborative journalism, which is a big phenomenon. So hopefully, whether it's in journalism or in how we face the issues of the moment, pressing as they are, collaboration and working together is a great answer, and we certainly believe that at the News Project.
Oh, that's awesome. Look at this comment from Avinash Sahai, who says, "Good morning, Sree. Very invigorating to attend your program. This is a year of survival. Financial stability can be addressed if you are alive." Very interesting. And he says thanks and gives you a thank you. Our friend Stefan is watching. He says, "We'll certainly promote the News Project live on my latest Spin It social hour tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. A pleasure to help Merrill and Alex and journalism at large." I think we have a banner here to show you his new project. Here it is. I'm going to take this other banner off and just bring, there you go. So he's going to be interviewing Sally Ryan of at Sally Ryan Photo. It's a Los Angeles-based amazing photographer who's won every major award. And Stefan is our friend and colleague who is a former photo editor of the New York Times for 20 years and now is a social media and photography expert and works with us. And here's a comment that has come in. Good to hear positive views on the future of journalism. And Mark Lee from Durham, North Carolina, would love to talk to you about this series and how we can get on it. I have a wonderful podcast that airs on Mondays and will also tell my friends from NABJ, that is the National Association of Black Journalists. Thank you so much, Mark. You're a great supporter of this show. And now you have another show that you can support tomorrow. Please tune in 6 p.m. Eastern time to the News Project Live. And we've just getting so many great comments from around the country. And we're just very, very honored to be able to be part of this journey with you. So we wish you the very best. I'm going to wrap up here. One of the things, Merrill and Alex, that I like to do is because people join these things in fits and starts, I always reintroduce our guests at the very end. You never see this on a panel. So our guests were Merrill Brown at Merrill BRO, CEO of the News Project, and Alex Leo at Alex M. Leo, head of audience at the News Project, a technology and services startup working with news outlets to address the critical need for sustainable business models in the news market. So we're just very grateful to both of you. I'll let you folks go while I do some wrap up here, but I do that so that people will be tempted to stay on and watch the restart, because that's what happens, not on television, only in the social channels that things like that happen. So thank you very much. We wish you the very best.
Thanks, Sree.
Thanks, Sree.
Bye-bye. And it was so nice to be part of that conversation, and a positive conversation, as you heard, about the future of media, but still clear-eyed, not just positive. Let's look at our sponsors and thank them once again. And we are sponsored by Nidhi Sinha, who says congrats to ProPublica on its latest Pulitzer Prize that makes 6 in 12 years. 6 in 12 years. Journalism that holds the powerful accountable. Support ProPublica at a time when deep dive journalism is most needed. Donate today, propublica.org. We are also very grateful for the support of Pratham USA. You can double your dollars right now, folks. Double your dollars. Your impact will have double the opportunity, because through the Pratham USA, hold on, I'm just going to kill those mics. Through Pratham USA, you can go right now, make a donation, and your donation will have this great impact and opportunity. So please, please, please go in there and make a donation right now, and we will be very grateful. You can just go to prathamusa.org or go to prathamusa.link/Rise for Pratham through Sunday, and you will be able to support this great initiative. And finally, a reminder that we are doing a very special Mother's Day edition of the Sunday New York Times Read Along. Yes, we read the Sunday New York Times out loud like crazy people with guests from the New York Times and elsewhere every single Sunday. And from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m., we've had some amazing guests, including this week we had former Detroit bureau chief of the New York Times, Mickey Maynard, was with us. She's also a great Bollywood fan, it turns out. And just look at this all-star list of people we have interviewed on our show. We went to the home of Tom Jolly, the print editor of the New York Times. We went to the home of Amy Vershup, the New York Times travel editor. We spoke to Stacey Stewart, the president and CEO of March of Dimes. We spoke to Sunny Slaughter, guest on 1619 Project, and celebrating that project that just won a Pulitzer Prize. And we interviewed the great Harlan Coben, who is the #1 New York Times bestselling author right now, and the producer of 3 Netflix specials at the same time, 3 Netflix shows. It was just great to have them all on the show. So if you want to do a shout out for your mom, we will run an ad for her. Half the proceeds will go to Nick Kristoff's C19 Impact Initiative. Look at these great, very reasonable prices. Please do email us, Sree@Sree.net, or go to digimentors.link/mothers, digimentors.link/mothers. We would love to salute your mom or your grandmom or your aunt or somebody in your life who is like a mother figure to you. And I'm just so grateful for everyone for being here. We see a very nice comment from Tom Franklin. Good luck, Merrill and Alex, for the News Project Live Spin It Social Hour. Great discussion. And Stefan says, Mark Lee rocks, such an incredible supporter of so many. Tom says, ciao, enjoyed that. And the great Jonathan Borstein, who is here every single day for 56 straight days as we have hosted this show. Great to attend a program about the future of journalism that maintains journalism has a future. What a perfect note to end on. I'm so grateful to all of you for your support, your interest in this project. We have some amazing events coming up on Friday. We're talking to one of the world's top experts on Shakespeare, and maybe 2 top experts on Shakespeare, about Shakespeare and pandemics. And did he really write King Lear during the plague? What can we learn about creativity? And do you have to write the equivalent of King Lear to be considered successful these days? And the answer is no. But please join us for that. We have a great show coming up on theater and COVID-19 with Adam Green, the Vogue theater critic, which will be awesome. We have that Mother's Day special coming up on Sunday, and many, many exciting speakers coming up. I have to announce, because it's too exciting, Sapphire, who the great writer whose book became the Oscar-winning movie, is going to be with us soon. So just with the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal, Matt Murray, coming, it's just going to be one great show after another. All of this under the framework of what's happening with COVID-19, and as we salute and thank our first responders and frontline workers and store clerks, and we also salute and pray for everybody who has suffered at this time. Thank you very much, everybody. I want to hear from you. My email is on the screen, Sree@Sree.net, SREE@SREE.net, and our Twitter handle is @Sree. And the best way to track all of my shows is to please go to YouTube and become a subscriber. You will know when I'm live, and you can see all these amazing shows that we have put on the air for the last 56 days, as well as all the New York Times read-alongs. You will see them all there together. And final thing I want to tell you is this. This is my WhatsApp alert system. And so what you can do is hold up your phone and just scan that code, and you will be invited to know when I have a new show up. It is not a WhatsApp group for your racist uncle. It is just an alert system. So email me or ask to be put on that, and you will get that as well. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thank you for your support. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.